television highlights of the news of yesteryear. It's 1919, and fighting in France halted 8 months ago. So Britain's John Alcock and Arthur Brown will take this converted army bomber on peaceful and historic flight across the North Atlantic. Success of Alcock Brown inspires flights in other giant planes. Near Milwaukee, Wisconsin, big Pullman of the Air is christened for her maiden voyage, and one more one-time bomber roars into peacetime skies. Airplanes and pilots are still pretty much freaks and novelties in years just after the armistice. Here in Houston, Texas, big crowd of curious is attracted by Air Force veterans and pioneering airmen on National Barnstorming Tour. On a plane like those which saw service in World War I and sold by government as Army surplus, daredevils thrill gaping populations with stunting in the sky. But the plane, too, excites American youth. Across the Atlantic, Europe's most enterprising airmen launch some semblance of air travel between London and Paris. In open cockpits, passengers are lifted from ordinary open fields and flown across the channel in flimsy and slow-moving craft. But it's one of man's first attempts to put a device of playboys and daredevils to commercial use. The flying machine is suddenly a long way from Kitty Hawk. Soon, cockpits are covered for comfort of passengers, but still most commercial planes are small. Then, planes designed to carry bigger loads cut cost per trip. It's 1921, and passenger list is now longer than list of crew. Then planes still bigger carry not only passengers, but their baggage too, as flying becomes more practical every day. It's now May 2nd, 1923, and in San Diego, this giant Fokker is being heavily fueled for Lieutenants John McCready and Oakley Kelly at start of history-making transcontinental flight. Next day, they finish flight to New York non-stop. But greatest single contribution to advance and popularity of aviation is made in May of 1927 by 25-year-old Charles A. Lindbergh and his Paris hop. To every youngster in the world, Lindy is the hero of heroes, and playing pilot outmodes playing war or cowboys and Indians. Here are airmen of the future. And here's thrill-packed finish of 1927's second most important flight. It's June 7th, and Clarence Chamberlain, with backer Charles Levine, has reached Berlin after a journey of nearly 4,000 miles. Chamberlain's flight was longest on record for years. Levine was first passenger to fly Atlantic, and in Germany begins the era of sky giants. This ship carried 8 passengers and crew of 3. On Great Lakes in 1929, this giant Dornier is scheduled for service between Detroit and Cleveland, carrying 50 passengers at a time. Bigger still in 1929 is the house-like DOX, equipped with 12 water-cooled Curtiss engines with accommodations for 100 passengers. On test flight, DOX once rose from waters near Friedrichshafen with 169 passengers aboard. It leaps oceans and continents with ease, and gasoline to spare. And then March 17, 1937, the route of the great China Clipper spreads man's wings across the yet unconquered vastness of the Pacific. After trailblazing flights by Captain Edwin Musick and his crews, Sikorsky Clippers make regularly scheduled flights to the Orient. And planes are true luxury liners of the skies. Man's dream of glorious castles in the air come true. And soon both land and sea around the entire globe were covered with a net of airline routes. With distance conquered, time is the next element to be assailed by man's unfluttering wings. With jet propulsion, this Canadian airliner speeds from Montreal to New York in just 1 hour. And as more and bigger planes fly by power of jets, the age of the propeller and gasoline engine seems doomed. From Kitty Hawk to Lindbergh, from Lindy to jetliners, from jets to rockets, who knows but what the next stop will be the moon or Mars?
It's 1929, and in Vienna, Austria, Mrs. Van Leer draws a crowd by lying down on the job. Well, this looks like work anyway. This is 1929 demonstration of what to do if you're caught in the middle of the street when the light turns green. You just turn black and blue.
Detectors don't lie. It's August 3rd, 1922, and convicted killer Dudding is taking one of first lie detector tests on record. At nation's capital, top criminologists question Dr. Dudding, who spent 12 years in prison for crime he claims he didn't commit. Again, doctor says no when accused of killing, and detector says he's telling the truth.
A Republican Roosevelt. It's 1921, and here's Teddy Roosevelt, third grandson of the Roosevelt of Rough Rider fame. And he's pretty good on a horse himself for a lad of 7. Like his late father, he served in World War II. Like his grandfather, he may someday enter White House.
Here with Arnold Daly in 1920 is actress Grace LaRue. And here she is with Hale Hamilton, wishing her bon voyage. Star of Broadway and London stages from 1907 to 1929, Miss LaRue created sensation singing song You Made Me Love You.
Back from trip to Japan in 1926, here's financier Thomas W. Lamont with Martin Egan. One of nation's biggest bankers, Lamont was expert in international finance, prime mover in worldwide establishment of peaceful international relations. Thomas Lamont.
Devon disaster. No, this isn't aftermath of atom bomb, but the result of the fury of an explosion in a factory full of firecrackers. For it's April 3rd, 1930, and series of 3 explosions has leveled 7 acres of the Pennsylvania Fireworks Display Company and damaged property in wide circle around the powder plant. Many residents are hurt, and many automobiles and trucks are wrecked beyond repair. Police and cadets of nearby military academy patrol streets of stricken area where 10 are dead, 4 critically injured, and scores more less seriously hurt. All fatalities are in factory itself, but among injured are passers-by and residents of area cut by flying glass, when tons of firecrackers all went off at once.
Nature's Service Station. It's 1924, and at Black Diamond, Alberta, Canada, oil men have opened wells that produces the finished product, refined gasoline. It's talk of newly opened Turner Valley Field. And if you don't believe fuel can be taken straight from well to auto tank, just look at this. Mother Nature's own brand of gasoline has pep. He hardly put his foot on the accelerator. Honest.
The Bells of Riverside. It's 10th of September 1930, and then biggest bell in America starts journey to Laura Spellman Rockefeller Carillon, atop picturesque Riverside Memorial Church above the Hudson on Manhattan Island. trip of 400 feet takes just 5 minutes. Weighing more than 20 tons, Bell was made in England, is next to last to be placed in 4-octave carillon. Its tone is low C, and one more bell, low D, almost as big, has yet to be hoisted into place. All told, carillon will soon house 72 bells to fill the Manhattan air with music from heaven.
Some shakes. At Jack O'Brien's reducing salon in 1936, here's example of the fashionable way to get that girlish figure. But it sounds as if the girls are also getting the giggles. Let's listen.
Oh, Helen, you know, if we get back upstairs, they won't tell us.
No, they're not being tortured, but for a flat fee are getting their tummies flattened. It wasn't only fun, it was also the fashion.
Bucking outboards. It's 14th of July, 1935. And here's start of outboard motorboat regatta at Buffalo, New York. And it's speed, speed, speed. Sharp turns of closed course make every turn a possible last turn for every racer. And anything can happen anytime. It's anybody's race. Anybody's? Well, it's not going to be this fellow's unless he wants to swim across the finish line. Only thing hurt by spill is his pride as he treads water and watches other boats. Buffalo's outboard motorboat enthusiasts are in for still more excitement as Fred Jacoby Jr. wins. But this isn't Jacoby. This is just another also ran and also tipped over and almost ran over the cameraman. Oh.
Television highlights of the news of yesteryear. Yesterday's newsreel brings you some of the most dramatic pictures ever filmed. It's October 9th, 1934, as the cruiser Dubrovnik steams into the harbor at Marseille, France. It carries King Alexander I of Yugoslavia. Visiting royalty gets the traditional 21-gun salute, but stark tragedy is to accompany Alexander to France. King Alexander on the right, in the full dress of a Yugoslav admiral, receives official greetings from Minister of the French Navy, Pietri, and leaves the Dubrovnik for the launch that is to carry him to the mainland and to death at the hands of an assassin. The Yugoslav ruler ordinarily wore a bulletproof vest, but the fit of his full-dress uniform prohibited body armor, and the smiling monarch never dreamed that it was his concession to fashion that was to cost him his life. Off to the mainland goes the launch, and King Alexander prepares to meet Foreign Minister Jean-Louis Barthou of France. Both were to attend a diplomatic meeting in Paris, an engagement neither was to keep. A wall of dignitaries and guards protects Alexander and Monsieur Barthou at the dock. The French Secret Service had tried in vain to restrain the king from landing in Marseille, fearing an attempt on his life. Barthou and Alexander prepared to take their last ride, escorted by mounted squadrons of the Mobile and Republican Guard. Watch particularly the officer on horseback to the right of the car. He is Lieutenant Colonel Poilet. And somewhere in the crowd, an assassin prepares to carry out a deadly plan. Seconds later, and shots ring out. Police lines are broken with the crowd surging and milling in every direction. Lieutenant Colonel Poilet cuts down the assassin with his saber. But inside the car, King Alexander of Yugoslavia is dead, and Monsieur Barthou is dying. Efforts to control the huge crowd and permit the death car to proceed to a hospital are unsuccessful, with the Marseille throng not knowing Alexander had died, shouting, "Long live the king!" Delay in getting aid to the French Foreign Minister results in Bartou's death, and the royal car, in a matter of seconds, has become a horrendous hearse. As word of the tragedy penetrates the crowd, many become unmanageable, and the death cart twists arduously through massed humanity. King Alexander I of Yugoslavia is slain. Tradition passes the ruling of his people to young Peter II. The king is dead. Long live the king!
(1939), and Destiny directs a drama of the deep. The salvage ship Falcon prepares to try to raise the sunken submarine SQUALUS 15 miles off Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Admiral Cowell, in charge of the attempt, watches as last preparations to lift the SQUALUS 85 feet from the ocean floor are made. Commander Maquin, rescued skipper of the SQUALUS, stands by as air lines are attached and bells and gauges controlling the lines are tested. One of the divers who risked his life to help save the 33 survivors now reports everything in readiness for the venture. A tense moment, and then the dramatic attempt, climax of months of operations. Huge pontoons have been attached to the SQUALUS underwater, and they are about to be inflated. First to break water are the marking buoys, clearing the path for the pontoons and the 1,450-ton underwater victim. The first pontoon hits the surface. Success seems only a matter of moments now, as watchers eye the water for the second pontoon and the sunken ship. More air is forced into the pontoon. Something's wrong! The second pontoon has broken loose. The churning water is a bad sign, and the fears of the rescue workers prove well-founded, as the SQUALUS, which was to be raised successfully the following year, breaks water momentarily, only to slip silently back to its ocean bed tomb.
In 1932, when Secretary of the Treasury Mellon and Assistant Secretary Bond examined new United States currency, which, to save paper and conserve vault space, has been reduced practically a third in size. The old bill, 3 1/8 by 7.5 inches, and the new bill, 2 5/8 by 6 3/16. Big Bill and his kid brothers, Small William. Preparations are made to ship the bills to Federal Reserve distribution centers, and within a year, the old bills ought to practically disappear. Just in case you haven't seen any lately, here are the smaller bills: Washington on the 1, Jefferson on the 2, Lincoln on the 5, Hamilton on the 10, Jackson on the 20, U.S. Grant on the 50, Franklin on the 100, McKinley on the 500, Cleveland on the 1,000, Madison on the 5,000, and appropriately enough, Chase the 10,000.
The Duncan sisters, singing stars of Topsy and Eva and other musical comedies, helped President Hoover raise funds for famine victims of Europe. Yes, sir, some pumpkins, those Duncans. Wesley Barry, famous freckle-faced boy movie star, arrives in Chicago on a nationwide tour of junior Naval Reserve stations. In the mayor's office, Barry, famous for his country kid characterizations, brings along a bowl of fruit as an official present and does some munching before luncheon. Last birthday for Luther Burbank, world-famed naturalist. These pictures were made April 14, 1926. Luther Burbank, America's leading scientist of the soil. Act
actual photographs of a history-making round-the-world flight. Indian Harbor, September 1924, and American flyers land in Labrador. Lieutenant Lowell Smith, commander of the Chicago, arrives. Watching is Lieutenant Locatelli, Italian airman, who failed in the flight and drifted for 3 days in waters like these. It's been 5.5 months since 4 planes started around the world, and the last lap looms. The planes are to wind up traveling 26,345 miles in 175 days after leaving Labrador and its awestruck natives. En route to Boston, last leg of the journey, official pictures are taken during the flight. Boston Harbor is a welcome sight to the travel-weary airmen. They set down their ships and travel by launch to the mainland, where Lieutenant Smith is greeted by city, state, and military officials and escorted to Boston Common. Here, Mayor Curley presents the flyers with the key to the city and a rousing cheer led in person by His Honor.
It's the turn of the 1920s, and these bathing suits are enough to turn any man's head. Redondo Beach, California sees the latest in beachwear, including the latest shocking no-stocking fad. More aquatic modes and models. Somebody chasing you, girls? Variety set the fashion, and a miss is as good as her style. Say, she almost put her foot in it. Still 1920, but we moved to Chicago for a fashion show. The mode of the moment was for skirts to be shorter, but they say it made the men look longer. If you can disregard those hats, you'll find today's fashion's not too different. Toodaloo.
Forest Hills, New York, 1931, and young Ellsworth Vines plays George Lott Jr. for the National Tennis Championship. Vines returns a Lott smash, and the two youngsters battle it out. Vines finally puts it away for the point and the match. National tennis enjoys one of its greatest periods as Vines precedes such tennis greats as Bitsy Grant and Don Budge to win the national title at the age of 19. It's England, and it's the Grand Sweepstakes in 1939. Favored to win the steeplechase is Killstar at 8-1. But Workman, third in last year's race, has many followers. That's Workman now, and the horses are on the way to the post. Horses, riders, and the crowd are tense. The official starter is ready, and there they go. At the first jump, Beaches Brook, the leader, Royal Denelli, takes a header, and the tough course takes its toll early. Killstar hugs the rail on Workman's heels, but he faces Lord Derby's underbit, Dominic Cross, and Black Hawk on the second go-round. Beaches Brook again, and already many of the 37 starters are through. Watch this action in slow motion as Red Helmet and Scratchwood failed to take the jump. 26 of the 37 horses are now down. And it's Workman getting the ride of his life as the race narrows down to a contest between him and McMuffet. The last barrier. Both horses make it, and then comes the stretch run with Workman flashing his heels in front to win by 3 lengths. The winner really lets off steam.
Television highlights of the news of yesteryear. You're about to see the first motion pictures of the North Pole. May 1926, and Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd is aboard the SS Chantier in Greenland in last-minute calculations with his staff before the historic flight to the pole. A specially constructed raft moves the plane from the vessel, and the task of rowing the ship through ice-filled waters begins. The camera climbs aboard the raft to film epic pictures of the struggle to drag the plane onto the mainland for the takeoff. After 36 hours of heroic work, the airship is reassembled on land and preparation for the takeoff begins. It has been 17 years since Admiral Peary's trip to the pole, but never has the icy Arctic region been conquered by air, with yesterday's Newsreels camera aboard to record the event on motion picture film for posterity. The runway smooth, the roar of the monoplane's motors splits the Arctic air. Byrd confers with Floyd Bennett just before takeoff time, and there it goes. Along the smoothened ground, the ski-equipped plane speeds, gathering momentum for the takeoff, and then near disaster. A snowbank spins the ship around. Fortunately, the only damage is to one of the skis, and this is quickly repaired. Once more, the single-winged sky ship is ready to start where no plane had ever been before, the North Pole. And there it goes. In Commander Byrd's own words, we selected for our flight a Fokker 3-engine monoplane, which had already flown 20,000 miles. It had 200 horsepower motors and two 100-gallon gasoline tanks in the center of each wing, and two others, each holding 110 gallons, were carried in the fuselage. Its fuel consumption was 28 gallons an hour at cruising speed. As the last Arctic mountains fade from view, careful check on bearings is kept by Byrd. And then below, a dreary, ice-covered sea, the North Pole. These are history-making pictures, a permanent record of Byrd's triumphant victory over the Arctic with the plane circling the North Pole area. Again, Commander Byrd's own words. On May 9, 1926, Floyd Bennett and I looked down upon the North Pole, completely verifying the feasibility of using airplanes anywhere in the globe. Back to its Greenland base comes the tri-motored Fokker, with crew members of the SS Chantier hailing the intrepid airman. Completely confirming early claims of Admiral Peary, Byrd brings his record of polar conquest to Earth with a lifelong ambition attained. Later, with the plane safely aboard the Chantier, Byrd starts for home, bringing his most precious possession, the American flag he carried to the pole. All hail the hero of the expedition, Richard E. Byrd, first to fly over the North Pole.
Remember Marilyn Miller, loveliest of stage ingenues? July 30th, 1922, she married Jack Pickford in Hollywood. The dancing darling of shows like Sunny and The Follies weds Mary Pickford's brother, with Doug Fairbanks on hand. Queen of musical comedy and filmland's Jack Pickford, both of whom were to succumb to untimely illnesses. That's Mary Pickford, America's sweetheart, who was Hollywood's most charming hostess at the wedding at her Pickfair home. The bride, talented, beautiful Marilyn Miller. Cherbourg, France, May 1935. Start of the maiden voyage of the Normandie, floating pleasure ship that for 6 years defied its destiny. The Normandie made its initial voyage from Cherbourg to New York, a distance of 2,971 miles, in 4 days, 3 hours, and 13 minutes, an all-time transatlantic record. Remember, we're in 1935, 5 years before the United States government bought the floating skyscraper from France. When the ship finishes its record run, thousands line up to inspect the luxurious interior. The Normandy was built at a cost of $60 million. Its grand foyer and main dining hall rival the decorative splendor of a palace. 1,000 feet long, weighing 80,000 gross tons, the ship boasted artistic murals created by France's greatest painters. In December of 1940, the United States bought the vessel and interned it in New York. And then, 2 years later, disaster at the dock. The Normandie's in flames. As the conflagration ravages the Queen of the Seas, firefighting apparatus pours hundreds of thousands of gallons of water into her. It is this water pumped into the ship that causes it to capsize, and here it lies, half submerged. In October 1946, it was sold for junk. Ignoble end of a lovely lady of the sea. Pictorial record of the tragedy of the Hindenburg. May 6, 1937, and the airship, soon to be a twisted mass of metal as a result of a fire that occurred at Lakehurst, New Jersey, even as hundreds hailed the dirigible's arrival from Hamburg, Germany, passes over New York City. Catastrophe in the making. Storm clouds gather over the Jersey coast, and Lakehurst is a welcome sight to Zeppelin passengers and crew. Winds whip the mooring lines. Then, as its passengers watch, tragedy strikes. A terrific explosion in the tail fin of the dirigible, and passengers and crew hurl themselves out of the ship into the ground. Navy and Army men risk their lives as the fire eats its way through 7 million feet of inflammable hydrogen gas and leaves a steel skeleton in its wake. Only a miracle saved those who were fortunate enough to quit the ship in time. But 36 of the 97 people aboard perished in the most horrible air disaster of all time. Hundreds of tons of fuel oil burned for an hour after the explosion. The dense black smoke giving a funereal touch to the sky that sped the Hindenburg to its doom. Only 10 minutes, and the airship would have been moored safely. But it required less than 1 minute for it to turn from a luxury ship to an incandescent death trap. Included in the list of fatalities was Captain Ernst Lehmann, commander of the Hindenburg, who perished as the Pride of the Skies reached its journey's end.
Paris in 1917, and the fashion capital dictates the latest in ladies' suits and coats. Fur trimmings are the mode, and large brimmed hats took a bit of a bow. Coats are fur trimmed and ankle length. The debutante slouch. We're still in Paris to see these afternoon gowns. My lady on the left wears a gray crepe dress, tiered skirt with a side drape setting, and featuring a rounded neckline blouse with dolman sleeves. On the right is a sleeveless flower print with first appearance of the clutch chapeau, designed not to blow off an automobile. Come into the garden now for a look at some cocktail dresses. The model on the left, an off-the-shoulder creation. And remember, this is 1917. On the right, crisscross stitching relieves the severe black. Yesterday's newsreel brings you a forerunner of the new look in the old days.
Who's who in the American theater? Names to awaken memories participate in a drive to raise funds for new Shakespeare theater in England. It's 1928, and this is George Arliss, star of The Green Goddess, as Shylock. Remember when Ernest Lawford thrilled theatergoers? Here he is lending his talents to the drive in the role of Malvolio in Twelfth Night. Madge Kennedy, star of the sensational Paris Bound in 1927 as Maria in Twelfth Night. Brilliant Peggy Wood as Alice in Henry V. Unforgettable romantic Leslie Howard as Romeo. Star of the Three Musketeers, Dennis King as Mercutio. Impish music hall queen Beatrice Lilly as Audrey in As You Like It. Queen of the American Theater, Katharine Cornell as Cleopatra. Response to the star's appearance results in a new memorial to William Shakespeare, Dean of Dramatists.
It's 1929, Catalina Island, and young Horton Smith, 20-year-old golfing great from Missouri, is matched against Walter Hagen, near the end of his career as an outstanding golfing stalwart. It's the last hole, and Smith bangs out a beauty, later sinking a putt to win the match. Youth triumphs as the Hague, all-time golfing great, steps down. Ralph Greenleaf, pocket billiard champion of the world. Trick stuff from Greenleaf in March 1928 when he defeated Frank Taberski for the title. Reverse English and a draw. Taberski's seen enough. Congrats to the cutie of the cue stick. Come on out to California in 1930 and watch a new world's record set. It's Los Angeles, May 10th, and the 220 straightaway goes to George Simpson. Simpson, the winner, is to run against the field in the 100-yard dash. And here they come as Frank Wyckoff flashes down the center path to win the 100 in the new record time of 9 4/10 seconds.
Television highlights of the news of yesteryear.
Worst sham of the century. Neville Chamberlain, unwitting victim of the worthless Munich Agreement, prepares to meet Hitler and Mussolini and save Czechoslovakia. Along with Daladier of France, Britain's Prime Minister arrives in Munich for a conclave which was to prove the fallacy of appeasement. Hitler's demands for the Sudetenland were granted upon promise of no further territorial claims by Germany. It's September 30th, 1938, and Mussolini signs for Italy, followed by Daladier for France. By the terms of the agreement, 1/5 of Czechoslovakia comes under the German flag. Bitterly protested by the Czechs, nevertheless, the agreement by Chamberlain, which he believed would avert all-out war, was hailed in London on its arrival from the conference.
We regard the agreement signed last night and the Anglo-German naval agreement as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again.
En route to the palace, Chamberlain stopped at 10 Downing Street, where he declared, "I believe it is peace for our time." On the palace balcony with their Majesties the King and Queen of England, the Prime Minister is cheered upon the success of his mission. But in the Sudetenland, Czechoslovakians accepted the first German troops with a skepticism born of distrust for Germany. On October 5th, Czech President Beneš resigned, and while a show at welcome was made when Hitler arrived, despair was in the hearts of the people. Even as the Nazi dictator inspects the fruits of his diplomatic victory, analysts the world over were speculating on his next move. This was the British-French concession to the Führer. This was the concession which was to fan the flame of world domination in Hitler, cause him to break the Munich Pact, arouse the world to combat, and result in his eventual destruction.
1928, and work begins on the largest structure of its kind ever attempted by man, the Boulder Dam over the Colorado River. Thousands of men gather to begin work on the $165 million project, which will back up a lake 160 miles with the shoreline 550 miles around. The base of the dam, when completed, will be 650 feet thick with a height of over 730 feet. Workmen scale away loose rocks from the cliffs lining the site, and the 8 years that follow see portions of the dam completed in sections. The turbulent Colorado River has been harnessed. All that remains now is addition of finishing touches and closing of the huge dam gate. Here will be the largest artificial lake ever built. And now preparations are made to permit the Colorado to come in. Workmen are finishing. The dam gate is lowered. And here comes the Colorado. In 3 months, the water will climb to the top of the gate. And now the lake has been formed. Arizona and Nevada have joined in this tremendous project, and even far-off Los Angeles benefits from the electricity generated. Completed in 1936, Boulder, by act of Congress in 1947, was renamed Hoover Dam in honor of the president during whose term it was started. This is Hoover Dam.
Historic flight of the Southern Cross, Oakland, California, 1928. And airmen under Captain Charles Kingsford Smith on the end are about to take off for Australia. The destination is Sydney, with scheduled stops in Hawaii, Fiji Islands, and New Zealand. Kingsford Smith and his gallant aides wing their way toward the first conquering of the Pacific by air. 24 hours later, the Southern Cross had landed in Honolulu, then 3,138 miles to Sava in Fiji, and then on to Australia. Nearing Sydney, the Southern Cross has completed 83 hours in the air and has flown a distance of 7,389 miles. Cheers for Kingsford Smith and his crew, C.P. Ulm, co-pilot, Captain Harry Lyon, American navigator, and James Warner of Kansas. The Southern Cross made it.
It's memory time, friends. Recall when this young lady was Ziegfeld's top singing star? You should. It's Ruth Etting, of course. Never to be forgotten for her singing of 10 cents a dance, Chicago artist Raymond Katz honors Miss Etting, who has been named by the Chicago Artists Association as the stage personality with most pulchritude, poise, and personality. This is Ruth Etting.
It's midway through World War I, and Douglas Fairbanks turns Liberty Bond salesman. Aiding Fairbanks in the drive is Charlie Chaplin, who deserts the band for bond selling, aided by a megaphone and his famous derby. The star of Easy Street, The Rink, The Kid, and dozens of other laugh-provoking films, together with the dashing Doug, sold millions of dollars in bonds.
All Britain celebrates as April 26, 1923 sees the royal wedding of the Duke of York, second oldest son of King George V and Queen Mary. Traditional costumes and setting mark the festivities as the Duke is driven to Westminster Abbey, where his marriage to Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon is to be solemnized. The bride, daughter of the 14th Earl of Strathmore, is to become Queen of England years later, with 2 daughters blessing a union that begins this day. Wedding guests wait to honor the royal couple outside Westminster Abbey. Ceremony completed, the Duke and Duchess of York, amid the pomp and splendor befitting royal marriage, drive through London streets en route to Buckingham Palace. Cheering thousands line the way, hailing the wedding procession. Here it passes through historic Trafalgar Square. The gates of Buckingham Palace open for the advance guard, and later, on the palace balcony, flanked by King George V and Queen Mary, the Duke of York, who will be King George VI, and his bride, who will be Queen Elizabeth, receive the homage of their subjects.
It's hats on when a lady's present in 1914. And this creation's a veiled sailor with flowered bands and side tilt. One down, but more to go in a moment. Let's see what this new chapeau is like. It features an off-the-face brim trimmed with white birds and has a sailor crown. Off the face is off the head. What's coming up now? This round brim cloche is trimmed with black feathers, very popular in the millinery mode of that moment. And now for a look at the cartwheel hat with gathered fabric and box crown. Somehow I don't believe she's going to like this either. See what I mean? But, Madame, there must be something you'll want. Now, I just happen to have one that's exactly right for your personality. It's an off-the-face profile brim in straw trimmed with plumes. But off with the old, on with the new. And finally, a flowered cloche. This suits Milady's fancy. Mighty fancy.
These are New York's earliest trolleys, but we are going to move to 1916, and a big transit strike looms as thousands of trolley workers decide to walk out unless demands are met by traction companies. Cooper Square Business Center will be hard hit, and wire screen trolleys take off to supply transportation. Jitneys make their appearance, and Fifth Avenue buses are overloaded as the strike, which started in Westchester, spreads to the heart of the city. 8,000 conductors and motormen march in an attempt to influence public opinion in their behalf. But with non-striking crews operating them, other trolley cars are off down the streets of New York to make sure that Gotham doesn't have to walk just because there's been a walkout.
Well, Lord blimey, if it aren't critic in dear old London, July 9th, 1920. Who's playing? Why, it's Addo and Heaton, of course. Not quite sure which is which, but don't believe the players are either, don't you know? There's a bloomin' run for the batsman. And off goes this bounder somewhere. Johnny old miss, eh, what? Frankfurters and the Brooklyn Dodgers were never like this. The game? Oh, you didn't miss a thing. The bloomin' contest ended in a tie or something of the sort. Cheero! Back to America in 1928 to see the horse racing event of the year, the Kentucky Derby. There they go. This picture you're watching is one of the first to employ the long-range lens that enabled an entire race to be photographed. And now, here come the horses on a muddy track, with Misstep leading the way as they near the first turn. Get your eye on the horse in fifth place as they go into the back stretch. It's one of the really greats in racing, Ray Count. Ray Count hasn't made his bid yet as jockeys maneuver for position with the far turn coming up. Misstep is still showing its heels to the field, but wait for the turn and the home stretch. That's when Ray Count will make his move. There's the last turn. It's still Misstep. And coming down the home stretch, Misstep's still out in front. But here comes Ray Count closing in. And just watch that horse as Jockey Lang maneuvers him over the muddy track. Ray Count strains in front, passes Misstep, and moves ahead to win by 3 lengths and grab a $55,375 purse. What a horse! What a race!